Is it working? Thinking.
I'm not sure. There we go. 3 seconds. Hi everybody. I'm live.
Excellent. Let me get the link.
I think anyway. So we're just
setting it up.
As always, the first couple of minutes will be a little bit shaky as we figure out what's going on. I've got my trusted assistant Rue just in the background there,
doing what I can,
trying to post the link and do all those sort of things so that everyone will be eventually, hopefully, able to see me.
All right, let me see.
But I'm hoping that the
audio is good.
Audio is good.
Speak some more.
Hello. We're doing that awkward bit that happens inevitably at the beginning of every one of these weird Facebook Live type things where we try and figure out if anyone can actually hear me. So Rue's got one ear. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Is it all working?
Anyone can give a thumbs up.
Looks like we've got a couple of people watching already.
In an event.
Greg48 says, sounds good. Cheers, mate. Thanks, Greg. That's awesome. I'll waffle. As you know me well, I will waffle inevitably. So I'll waffle for a little bit while we let everybody find the links that Rue's posting. And then when there's a few people, I'm expecting 6 or maybe 5 people to actually watch this. So when we get 3 or 4 warm bodies on the other end of the line, I'll start doing stuff. But oh, hello, hi everybody. Hey, getting some hello messages now. By the way, I'm on this massive, gigantic iMac, which I write on, which is really, really disconcerting because not only is my face massive on it, but also my face is right below the camera. So I can either look at me, which for you guys is going to look really weird, or I can look at you, look at the camera. But anyway, so if for a while, you're wondering what the hell I'm staring at, it's me on the screen down there, which is really distracting. Man, I'm not good at this modern technology crap. Anyway.
I'm not saying that you're old.
Yes. So...
Give us a sec.
And the best thing is that this bit of unprepared preamble is entirely for you lucky buggers, because we're going to cut this crap off when I put it onto YouTube, I promise. So if you want to watch me look far more streamlined, then that's probably the one to watch. You can just, Anyway.
All right, hang on. That's not gin.
I should probably point out this is not neat gin. Even I'm not that hardcore. It's just water. But pretty bottle.
And it's not pink. There we go. I have now shared the link.
Right, Rue tells me she's shared the link in a few places.
Possibly.
So hopefully people will.
Ooh. This is really disconcerting.
You can tell we're not exactly pros at this, eh? Anyway, the first one, assuming I don't do any more, the first one is obviously going to be a little bit all over the shop. But we'll get started now, and if anyone misses the beginning and really cares that much, they can always either rewind it. Apparently I've just discovered that you can rewind these kind of things. As long as they're not more than 8 hours long, I promise you, I will not keep you 8 hours. Or you can just go and watch it on YouTube if you miss the beginning. I've set the event for an hour. Hopefully it won't be anything like an hour because I have the bladder of an infant and I have to pee 3 times before an hour's up. So definitely won't go on that long.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting the thumbs up from Rue, and she's also standing by the hook in case I say something I shouldn't.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a little reading from my first book, That Bear at My Pants. I thought it was a little reading. I've just been flicking through it, and it turns out that it's a bloody great big long reading. So apologies for that. But if you get bored, you can always just doze off and wake up again closer towards the end or something. So yeah, I'd like to dedicate this actually to my dentist, Laura, because as a few of you who know me well might know, I had a bit of an accident. I just passed out in the middle of a back garden at a party and fell on some lovely soft grass. Unfortunately, there used to be a swimming pool underneath that lovely soft grass, and where I fell was the edge of the swimming pool concrete surround covered over with a little bit of grass. So I fell unconscious as I fell, and I broke my jaw in 3 places when I actually landed right on here. And I destroyed my entire mouthful of teeth. So my dentist, who was a reader and emailed me a long time ago asking if I would ever need any dentistry, I could, offering to help me out. She did me a fantastic job. So thank you so much, Laura, for sorting me out. If it wasn't for you, I would be even more ugly than this. And so, you'd just be seeing these horrendous gaps and jagged, broken things, because I was a bit of a mess for pretty much the last year and a bit. So.
Sorry. I'm just gonna butt in. Stop twitching.
Oh, sorry.
He's constantly like he's on a phone.
I'm nervous. I have a spin chair. You should see me on a ride. I do you counted the oscillations or something. You can probably read the frequency of my movement.
That's anyway. one way to burn calories.
Stay. Right. Okay. So in that case, we'll get on with it.
40 people.
Here's the paperback book. Ooh, it's very exciting. This one is the first one actually ever, which I dedicated to Rue, and they're actually an endangered species now. These ones, because I've redone the covers with some really pretty photos that I had from Ecuador. So if you've got one of these, it's actually probably rare now. And if I haven't signed it, then it's probably worth something. But I sign all the bastard things, so. Anyway, actually, and on that note, I should probably mention I do swear more than I should, and this book is the original unedited version. After I got a few complaints about swearing in the early days, I went through the ebook version and I cut out roughly 50 or possibly 70% of the F words to make the book literally give less fucks. But I didn't do that with the paperback version because I couldn't be buggered. So you're going to get the unedited version. So my apologies in advance. But what can I say? You wanted it real. So
as real as it gets.
Without further ado, dear reader, dear listener, the prologue. "Monkey!" I shouted as a brown blur swung out of the cage and onto the path. The chase was on. He skipped away with incredible speed, dodging around the corner and heading for freedom as though he'd thought of nothing but this moment for years. I bolted after him, grabbing the edge of a cage to swing around in hot pursuit. The monkey was a good way ahead of me and far, far more manoeuvrable. But I was faster on the straight. I accelerated down the narrow corridor between enclosures and was closing the distance between us when he reached the steps down to the main road through the farm. This was my chance. If he paused, if he found the stairs confusing, I'd be on him. But no, being a monkey, he didn't have much use for stairs. He just jumped. He made the 10-foot leap to the ground with ease, landed on all fours, and scurried off down the road. Pounding along behind him, I had less than a second to make the choice. If I slowed to negotiate the stairs, even part of the way down, it would all be over. Once he reached the trees by the first bend in the road, he'd be gone for good. Time was up. I reached the top of the steps at a dead run and launched myself over the edge. In the seconds I was airborne, my entire life flashed before my eyes. I seemed to have spent a disproportionate amount of it chasing monkeys. Somehow I landed on my feet with bone-jarring force. I was only a step behind the monkey. My leap had taken me considerably further than his, but my body was moving too fast for my legs. I managed to push off with my feet at the same moment as I started to fall headlong on the ground. The result? I bounced forward another metre, sailing high above the form of the fleeing monkey, then crashed to earth and flattened the fucker. The impact knocked the stuffing out of me. It temporarily turned the monkey two-dimensional. Pain shot through me. I felt like I'd fallen 10 feet onto a small primate. For the monkey, it must have been like being beaten around the head with a banana tree. For a split second, neither of us could move. He recovered quicker than I did. Amazingly, he wriggled out from under me and leapt towards freedom, just as I, still lying prone, reached out with both arms and caught him. Unfortunately, I could only catch him around the middle, which meant that, whilst he wasn't going anywhere, he wasn't particularly happy about it. In far less time than it takes to tell, the monkey writhed around in my grasp and sank his fangs into my hand. Ah! The monkey switched his attention to my other hand and bit down hard. Ah! I shrieked. I let go of the recently bitten hand, but I had no other options. I had to grab him again or lose him. As I tried to grab his neck, he bit me again, puncturing the thick leather glove easily and scoring my vulnerable flesh. Again and again he bit down faster than I could even register the damage. I lay on my belly, flat out on the floor, both arms outstretched in front of me, and both hands wrapped around a frantically flailing ball of teeth and rage. It was sod all I could do. Without my hands free, I couldn't get to my feet, and without standing up, I had no way of controlling the beast. It was not the first time I had the thought, what the hell was I doing in Ecuador? And that's where the prologue ends. Now, interestingly enough, this was originally a story which happened much later in the book. And when I decided that I had to start off on something with a bit more action than there I was in Ecuador. I went to the animal refuge and I met people, and that was sort of, quite a placid and sedate beginning. So I thought I'll add that story at the beginning. And for a while, it also featured later on in the book because it was kind of important. But then because I was trying to make it a certain length, so it would, fit into a nice paperback and try and get published and all that. So I ended up cutting it out. So I've actually got I only just found this literally last night. Because I'm actually looking to publish some of the chapters that I cut out of here. I'm sending them out to people on my mailing list and putting them out on my blog and doing things like that. So anyway, I'll just read you the very end. It's not hilarious or anything, but just out of sake. So anyway, I frantically scrabbled with my legs and managed to get a knee under me. The monkey scored a nasty nip on a particularly sensitive little fingertip. I let out another howl of both pain and triumph, because after what seemed like a lifetime of struggle, but had actually only been a few seconds, I managed to climb to my feet. I gritted my teeth against the pain of my latest bite, and, while his teeth were still buried in my index finger, I finally managed to get my other hand fastened round the back of his head. "Now try and bite me, you bastard," I bawled at him. Slowly, the pain of my various injuries began to make itself known. My knees and legs were skinned from high-velocity impact with the ground. I was kind of glad the rest of me had been cushioned by a nice squashy monkey. Every bite was throbbing. Most of them were oozing blood. There was a reason we'd been keen to do dentistry on this particular monkey. He had a massive overbite. On a large example of a big breed of particularly vicious-toothed monkeys, this added up to a singularly impressive set of incisors. I figured I'd been bitten about 20 times. I was still shaking from the shock. I turned the thrashing monkey's head around so I could stare him in the face. He screeched and hissed and flailed. I had to resist a sudden urge to drop-kick the little git into the milking shed. "You are so lucky," I told him. I hadn't had time to wonder why no one had rushed to help me. It all happened too quickly. But as I approached the cage, I understood the problem. Locked into the enormous enclosure, Ecuadorians and volunteers alike were waging a pitched battle against the other three monkeys, and they were losing badly. Waving an assortment of broomsticks, nets, and gloved hands, the human contingent were leaping around futilely, colliding with the walls, tripping over logs, monkeys, and each other. The primates, being the cleverer group, were taking full advantage of their natural abilities, swinging around the roof at high speed, stopping only occasionally to drop in front of a leaping volunteer and trip him up. It was chaos on a grand scale. It would have been hysterically funny if I hadn't been bleeding out of almost every place it's possible to bleed out of. And I'll leave it there because it goes on. And there is a little treat in store for anybody who is on my mailing list, because they're about to get the end of that, which features a character who actually did get cut out of the books. And I've decided to reinstate his little sojourn because it was quite amusing. Anyway, enough of that. I'm gonna now read the chapter 1. Now this is like 15 or some pages, so this is a bit of a long one. So if it gets too long and you're bored shitless, tell Rue via text, because she's monitoring the text on the side of the thing, and I'm not because I've got my head in that. And she'll just come and shut me up, basically. So that's your only recourse from now on. You've been warned.
My job.
And I haven't prepared. I haven't even had a chance to actually read this. So
it's been a while.
For about 10 years since I wrote the thing. So anyway, here we go. So ready? Right. Brace yourselves. Chapter 1, Seeking Refuge. All I'd asked for was a little more adventure in my life. Now, I appreciate that in hindsight, this was obviously a huge mistake. There's even a proverb designed specifically to warn against it. It goes something like, be careful what you wish for. You might end up with your fingers in a monkey. The thing is, I'd spent several years trying and failing to be an actor. I'd been forced to give up when, after a lot of soul-searching, I realised I wasn't getting anywhere because I was crap. It was not my happiest hour. But to console myself, I bought a book called Work Your Way Around the World. It seemed like the answer. All the dead-end jobs I'd done whilst pursuing my theatrical dreams suddenly revealed a glimmer of potential. Translate any one of them to a different country and they became a lot more exciting. Why work in my local pub when I could do the same job in a bar in Bondi Beach or Miami? And so I set out on my grand tour, aiming to do a different job on every continent. I would visit the far-flung corners of the world, explore their secrets, and discover all there was to know about life in the process. I got as far as France. After 3 months of picking prunes on a baking hot plantation south of Bordeaux, having lost the ability to walk normally due to spending 60 hours a week on my knees, I decided to give up. It wasn't that the place broke my spirit, though it came perilously close. It was when the boss got drunk with us one night and confessed to drugging a gypsy who worked for him and feeding him into the prune drying furnace. That made up my mind. By daybreak, his entire workforce had evaporated. By midnight the next day, I limped through the door to my parents' house, exhausted, malnourished, and penniless. All in all, it had been a bit of a shitter. So on my list of preferred career choices, the one they get you to make in school, I'd already crossed off actor and explorer. Number 3 was astronaut, and to be honest, I didn't fancy my chances. So I did what I usually do when I get depressed. I bought a book. This one was about volunteering abroad, and that is how I found Santa Martha Animal Rescue Center in Ecuador, South America. Santa Martha's website described it as a volunteer-run wildlife refuge perched high in the mountains on the avenue of volcanoes. At any time, it was home to monkeys, parrots, even big cats, plus dozens of other creatures I'd never even heard of. All of them had been rescued from cruelty, chained up in marketplaces, kept illegally as pets, or destined for the black market. The job of the volunteers was to accompany the police on raids, rescue the animals, look after them, and eventually release them into the Amazon rainforest. It was the most amazing job description I'd ever read. I signed up instantly, and Toby, the English coordinator of the refuge, approved my application, despite me having absolutely no relevant experience. I convinced myself this was the shadowy hand of fate, rather than a blanket policy of employing every idiot that sent them an email. Surely there'd be some kind of training program before they sent me in to feed the lions. And before you can say 18-hour flight, there I was in Ecuador, heavily in debt to my credit card company and strapped into a rucksack the size and weight of a chest freezer full of dead rhino. I wish I could say I was happy about it. Nestled into a hollow in the Andes Mountains, Quito is the highest capital city in the world. Even the airport is over 9,000 feet. Planes that land there don't need to make a descent, they just go straight on. It's a banana of a place, curving halfway around the size of a gigantic active volcano. And nestled in the centre of Quito is the ugliest bus station in the world. Terminal Terrestre, it's called, which has a disturbing ring of finality about it. This is where I found myself on day 1 of my adventure. Through clouds of exhaust fumes, I could just about make out, well, nothing, actually. Visibility was about 3.5 feet. Petrol was clearly not too expensive in Ecuador, as the drivers seemed keen to leave the buses revving the whole time they sat in the station. Or maybe they were just afraid that if they turned them off, they'd never start again. A squint through the haze told me this was the more likely of the 2 reasons. Thick black smoke was coming out of the back of every bus. In fact, thick black smoke was coming out of the front of quite a few of them. Their destinations was displayed on little signs in the windscreen, ranging from proper plastic things to bits torn off a cardboard crisp box and scrawled on with a felt-tip pen. I was looking for somewhere spelled Tambilo, though how it's pronounced could be anyone's guess. The central island of the station was filled with dingy little shops and stalls. It must have been fairly obvious to any casual observer that the added weight of a carpet on my burden would have snapped my spine like a twig. Yet that did not deter the carpet sellers from bawling the benefits of their carpets at me as I passed. I was alone, downcast, and dangerously overburdened. Even if a colourful woolly carpet had been just what I needed to brighten my day, what the hell was I supposed to do with it? Shove it up my arse? A little way ahead of me, I spied a whole gang of young guys hanging out, doing nothing. They had the look of people that did that quite a lot. Their clothes had started to take on the colour of the atmosphere. Maybe I should ask them, I thought. What's the worst that could happen? Tambilo? I ventured. Tambillo? Yes, Tambillo. I'd studied Spanish intensively for almost half an hour on the flight over, and it was already starting to pay off. Suddenly the youths were racing around me in all directions, shouting constantly to each other as though it was some form of echolocation. A couple of them dodged right into the traffic and flagged down a pair of shuddering buses. A quick glance in the windscreens, and they started shouting and gesturing wildly at me. This could only be good news. The guys were standing in front of one of the buses and not letting it move. I took my life in my hands and sprinted between the cars. Arms reached down through the doors, and I was simultaneously dragged and pushed on board. My helpers banged on the side of the bus, as though to reassure the driver that no more walking rucksacks needed crowbarring through the door. Then they generously stepped out of the way, and the bus lurched off. It had worked! No matter the difficulty, I had overcome. I felt elated. Or possibly I was going into toxic shock from the smog. But I was on my way, and it was a lovely journey. It would have been lovelier if I hadn't been wedged between several kneecaps and an armpit, but with about 200 people on a bus built to hold 40, you really have to appreciate the small things. I had a turn at breathing every so often, and the involuntary motion of my nose against the filthy window of the bus cleaned a spot through which I could see a tiny part of the scenery I was passing through. The foothills of the Andes Mountains were thick with vegetation. Their sharply sculpted flanks were tamed into fields despite the ridiculous near vertical slopes. I saw a land so wild, so incalculably vast. I saw tin-roofed concrete shacks sprinkled liberally throughout it, and occasionally I saw a piece of tinsel hanging from the roof of the bus. It draped itself across my face every time the driver flung us round a hairpin bend. I never did figure out the Ecuadorian urge to decorate the inside of a bus like a Christmas tree. I even saw one with a mirror ball in it once, which begged the question just what part of my anatomy had room to dance. After 40 minutes of the most intimate bodily contact I've ever had with half a dozen strangers simultaneously, my journey neared its end. I caught a glimpse of the sign saying Tambilo, and the bus skidded to an almost stop. The door flew open, and I was helpfully rolled out of it by the driver's assistant. Further up the bus, another door opened, and people were leaping courageously out as more people from the bus stop matched their jogging speed to the buses and grabbed for outstretched hands, which hauled them on board. They don't waste much time around here, I said to myself as I picked myself up out of the dust. Only I said it with a few four-letter words. I'd landed on my stomach, which was lucky, as if I'd ended up on my back, I'd quite likely have died of starvation before managing to turn over. I dusted myself down and gazed across the road at my new hometown, and was very nearly cut in half by the next bus. It thundered along, hot on the heels of the first one that had so casually dispensed me. A few passengers fell out of the door in my general direction, and the bus accelerated onwards towards the horizon. I'd never seen so many buses, and never a single bus so crowded. Where the hell were all these people going? Not to Tambillo, for the most part, which was fine by me. The place seemed small and deserted, quite a relief after the Mad Max intensity of Quito. I was standing at the base of a mountain which rose majestically behind me. A road in fairly poor repair veered off upwards at a crazy angle past a few half-finished buildings that clung precariously to the slope. They gave me the impression that someone had started to build one, then realised he'd never be asked to walk all that way up to his house every day. When he'd abandoned the project halfway through, most of his neighbours thought, bloody hell, he's right, and they'd all buggered off to the pub. Tambillo town proper began on the other side of the Quito Road, which is actually part of the Pan-American Highway, and is probably the main reason that the road is described of variable condition. Marking the turn-off for Tambillo was a shop full of payphones, which struck me as a bad idea. I mean, 20 people on the phone in one room, how hard can you push your finger into your ear before you hit brain? And what the hell do you do if you need to make a call a minute after closing time? Obviously, someone was making money out of the racket though, Parked outside the telecabin was the biggest 4x4 truck I'd ever seen. It gleamed white and chrome like a poster child for the Size Does Matter campaign. 4x4s are popular over here, I'd noticed. By my calculation, they were the third most popular vehicle on the road in Quito, after knackered buses and boxy little yellow taxis made by some company too embarrassed to put a badge on them. I needed a taxi for the next leg of my journey. It wasn't long before one of the battered yellow things rattled into view. I flagged it down and half expected the driver's feet to shoot out of the bottom of the car and it skid along the road to brake it. Instead, it coughed to a halt in front of me and stalled. In the driver's seat was a tiny, weather-beaten man. In the passenger seat was an equally tiny, equally weather-beaten woman. They looked two weather-beaten kids short of a family outing. I almost mistook her for a paying passenger until she began to bark at me in Spanish. Oh, hell, I thought. Here goes. Santa Martha? Centro por Animales? I inquired. The couple exchanged astonished looks. Hacienda Don Johnny, I tried. It was what I'd been told to say. The man squinted at me as though checking it was not a mirage. Then he waved me towards the back seat. Finally, I opened the door and manhandled my rucksack inside. Both of them regarded it sourly. There was a creak of protest from the car's rear suspension, and I hadn't gotten in yet. The driver craned his neck to look at me as I sat in and closed the door. He looked at me for quite some time. I started to feel a little self-conscious, and his head looked like it was going to fall off at any moment. Then he spoke, which must have been difficult with his windpipe twisted at such an angle. I was thrilled that I understood the question, though a little concerned about the need to answer it. Where do you want to go? He'd asked. I tried again. La Hacienda de Johnny Cordoba, Refugio dos Animales? I got a blank look. God damn it! I knew this would happen. As for La Hacienda Don Johnny, Toby had told me. They all know it, all the taxi drivers. What a load of bollocks. As soon as I'd read that phrase, my blood had run cold, just from the potential for complete disaster inherent on relying on such a dubious piece of advice. Now I was stuck in a taxi with no way of explaining my desired destination beyond repeating the same useless statement and shrugging my shoulders. Hacienda de Don Johnny? I said, and shrugged at him. Inside I was starting to cry. Cerca de aquí? The driver asked. Near here? Yes, I said, for want of the ability to say, I haven't got a bloody clue, mate. So he fired up the engine and we sped off in the same direction as the endless stream of buses. As we charged down the highway, occasionally the driver twisted round in his seat to ask me, here? I could only shrug. Then he spied a little track branching off to the left, and with a cry of triumph he headed down it at top speed. Neither track nor car were particularly well suited to this, as the top of my head discovered immediately. It was a painful way to travel, but I had a feeling that the roof of the car would give out long before my skull. Thankfully, after a couple of minutes, we came to a group of tumble-down buildings surrounded by an open expanse of concrete. We pulled up into the middle and the car shuddered into silence. We had arrived at a farm of some kind, and one that didn't get many visitors from the looks of things. The car had barely stopped shaking when an enormous bearded man emerged from a corrugated iron barn and approached us at what must have been his top speed, for which I was grateful, since I was presumably on the meter. I glanced at the dashboard. No meter. This crappy car didn't even seem to have a speedometer. I guess I was paying whatever the driver thought his time was worth. Uh-oh. By this time, I had the uneasy revelation that the fat farmer and the driver were conversing at volume. Every so often, one of them would glance at me as though expecting something. There was something in the farmer's glaze that made my buttocks clench involuntarily. It was time for my broken record bit. Hacienda de Johnny Cordoba, I pleaded. They both stared at me. Santa Martha, I begged. They exchanged puzzled looks, then returned to staring at me. Not much headway, I thought. This clearly wasn't the place, and even if there was a way, I was no staying here. To gain a gut that size, the farmer must have eaten his entire family. I'm not going to be next on the menu. They'd started to jabber at one another again, punctuating each rapid burst of dialogue with a gesture in my direction. I felt a trickle of cold sweat run between my shoulder blades and prayed they weren't negotiating a price for my anal virginity. I waited for a natural pause and interrupted them. Look, this is the wrong place, I told the driver. No response. Do you speak English? I asked the farmer. Nothing. Okay, I addressed the driver in my mother tongue. We are not going to find the place like this because you don't have a clue where we are. I want to leave before this fat bastard tries to break me and eat me. Please take me back to Tambilo. If your car doesn't disintegrate or explode before we get there, I'll give you $5 just for being brave enough to drive the fucking thing. Okay? Yes. Tambio, I said, making let's go motions with both hands. He got the picture. He started the car, a minor miracle in my opinion, and with a few parting words he screeched away, leaving the farmer still standing there with his mouth hanging open. What a sight. Thank God it was receding. As we bounced back up the dirt track at top speed, I could tell the driver was in a bad mood. This was pretty much confirmed when he shot out onto the main road again. The car skidded to a halt and died. Tambio? I asked tentatively. He helpfully pointed back up the main road. I took the hint. I shoved my bag out of the back door, then clambered after it. I dug in my back pocket for some dollars and was grateful indeed that I had several single notes. I didn't like my chances of getting any change if I offered this guy 20. He scowled at me as he took the cash, then turned his attention to reviving his vehicle. This left his tiny, wrinkled wife to scowl at me while he coaxed some life into the engine. What a tag team. He favoured me with one more black look before his trademark top-speed exit left me choking on a cloud of dust. The walk back to town was an epic one. Stumbling along a rough gravel path beside the highway, wearing what felt remarkably like a grand piano on my back, I was at the first time at the full mercy of the sun. As each bus thundered past, its slipstream would drag me further from my goal. It was a long time before I recognised a cafe on the other side of the road, signalling my return to civilization. Soaked through with sweat, bent practically double, and breathing in gasps, I staggered over to the payphone shop and collapsed. For a while, I just lay in the shadow of the monstrous white truck, inventing choice phrases to throw at Toby when I finally got to meet him. I mean, ask for Hacienda to Johnny Cordoba? What an arsehole! For all I know, I was asking for a mythical character. I felt like I was standing in London asking for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, or worse, at Loch Ness looking for the home of a monster. My air of quiet desperation must have intrigued the locals. A couple of guys approached me wearing concerned expressions. They asked me something and I fell back on the only piece of information I had. Please, I begged, where is Hacienda de Johnny Cordoba? Johnny Cordoba? One asked, looking alert. You want taxi? Yes, I told him. Ah, Hacienda Don Johnny, see. He walked to the gleaming white truck and pulled open the door. No, was I about to get a lift? Then I noticed there were numbers on the side, an identical truck parked behind it, and another a bit further down the road. Well, bugger me backwards with the greased vegetable. This thing was a taxi, the mother of all taxis. This corner was a taxi rank, and I'd been dropped off right opposite it about 2 hours ago. And so I set off on a journey which would astound me every time I made it. Pretty much every day for the next 3 months, I would marvel at the tenacity of people determined to live on the side of this mountain. The single-track road was more pothole than surface in some places. It twisted and turned across the face of the mountain in a series of hairpin bends and switchbacks, and the gradient was insane. We passed people and donkeys walking up and down, and at one point another massive four-wheel drive taxi swung past us with inches to spare and at least 3 of its wheels hanging over the precipice. My driver didn't even bat an eyelid, which was just as well, because I was concerned that if he blinked too often, we'd end up nose first in one of the half-finished concrete block houses scattered along the route. Amazingly, he knew every crumbling chunk of road, every gaping chasm, of which there were several, every protruding boulder and every lethal bend. We raced past the lot, making decent speed despite the angle of the truck. Yet, about 10 minutes into the journey, we'd still not arrived. We were so high I was starting to feel faint. Back at home, this journey would already have cost me 20 quid and done at least 250 quid's worth of damage to the car. If anything could handle this truck, this punishment, the truck could. No wonder the taxis here were bigger than most of the houses. All of a sudden it hit me, the insanity of trying to coax that crappy yellow city cab up here. I felt quite glad my previous driver hadn't known my destination and tried to attempt it. It'd have been easier to carry his car up there more than to drive it. We crested a long, straight section of road and arrived at a huge pair of rusty iron gates. The driver winked at me as we turned in down my boss's driveway, and after another few minutes of twisting and bouncing, it brought us to a small cluster of buildings perched tenuously on the hillside, surrounded by fields. This was Santa Martha, and it was gorgeous. And there we go, guys. Done for now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
What do you mean?
A little timing in the corner tells me I've been waffling on at you poor guys for 35 minutes.
Oh, they love
Dear
it.
God, you're probably busting for a pee or a drink or both, possibly to shoot yourself. Thank you very much.
I will tell you, I'll tell Tony our plans. We've had some requests to decorate your office.
Oh, yeah.
This wall needs a bit of...
Yeah, we're in a rental house.
So, hey,
it's a crappy rental house, so we can probably decorate the walls. I can't do to them what Rue wants to do to them, which is
glitter.
Spray paint them in hot pink glitter. We've had this discussion.
It'd be awesome.
In fact, that monstrosity
What?
that you see behind me is actually one of our bedspreads. She bought it. I wasn't home. I was gone for a week. I was in hospital for a week, as happens from time to time. And she bought me to celebrate my return. Like, I would be happy. I was like, what the bloody hell? Did a rainbow throw up on our bed? So it got banned to being a wall hanging. And it's actually draped over the door at the moment, because I don't know how good the sound quality was, good or bad. Most people who do this seem to have a really cool microphone and all that set up, and I don't. So the noise in here is really echoey and really tinny. And I'm not set up for this, I'm just using the microphone built into my computer. So it sounded crap, basically. So we hung that up, and if you could see, if this could turn around, we've got like carpets and bedspreads dangling from every protrusion in the room, from the cupboard doors noise. And that, to absorb the sound. So I don't know. I don't have like a wall of egg boxes or anything, unfortunately.
Jeremy says it sounds great. You've had a request to do the truck chapter.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do, I haven't read the notes down the side or anything. I'll see basically if people liked it, if it was just rubbish, if people
liked it.
Pay me not to do it again. It could be worse. I'm not singing. You know what I mean? It could be worse. Believe me.
Give another week of isolation.
Yeah, and I'm wearing clothes.
Oh yes.
So Rue decided that she would have to be present to keep me decent. Because accidental nudity has happened. In fact, in all honesty, I was going to do this in my pajamas, because I work from home. I wear my pajamas. That's my uniform. I wear them every day. But my pajamas don't fasten in the location necessary for 100% decency, let's just say. And she pointed out that if I stood up to reach for something, there was a pretty good chance that you guys would just not be impressed with the view at all. So that's not happened. So thank your lucky stars. Who knows? The night is yet young.
It is nearly 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's actually that's a lie. It's 2:40. 2:40. Yeah, jeez. I can't half waffle anyway.
It's good.
I was gonna tell you a few more waffly stories and stuff, but I won't for now, because that was a killer long chapter. So
people love it.
In the future, should we try and do another one next week?
Yeah, it's the same time next week.
Yeah. Same time next week. All right. So I'll do it again same time next week, which means I can't drink again all Sunday night. Oh, what are you doing to me? But my voice goes even weirder when I drink. So yeah.
You know Hugh Grant.
I know. Yeah. I feel I should apologise, because a lot of my American readers probably expected me to sound like Hugh Grant. And if anybody's actually listened to the audiobook, as a quick plug, I make about threepence from an audiobook, so actually I don't make anything, because they gave me an advance and I haven't even come close to earning it out. But I actually had a company called Tantor made audiobooks, and they're available on audio, on Audible and all those places. But the guy who did it, he's bloody brilliant. He's absolutely hilarious. He sounds like some kind of public schoolboy kind of thing, and I can't even do an impression, but I got his audition, and the company they sent me an audition from a narrator. This is the guy we'd like you to do your audiobook, and it was an old American guy with a kind of droll, and I grabbed this monkey by the hand and I said to myself, what the hell am I doing in Ecuador? And I was like, Jesus Christ, what is that? I was like, the book will be like 100 hours long. This guy could talk any slower. So I spent about a day composing a really delicately worded email to these people, desperately trying not to offend them, saying, I'm English, and a lot of the appeal of my books, I think, especially to my American audience, is that I'm English and the weird, Englishiness and idiosyncrasies and all that sort of stuff. A lot of that is in the book. So, could you maybe try and find someone who's English? And they sent back to me and said, oh, we didn't realise the book was written by an English person.
Oh.
So they'd obviously never even read it.
Awkward.
So I was like, well, anyway. But they did. They sent me an American guy, a California guy, who does an English accent, and it is brilliant. I listened to his audition, and I nearly peed myself within the first 5 minutes. It has this hilarious, and I had my hands wrapped around this frantic, flailing ball of teeth and rage. I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing in Ecuador? Oh my God, it was hilarious. Anyway, it's the funniest thing I'd ever heard. Even when I wasn't writing jokes, he could make a shopping list sound funny.
He was great.
So he was ace. So anyway, he did my audiobooks. They're not available in the UK. I'm sorry.
They wouldn't pay.
Because they only license the rights for America. So I'm trying to get on that. But I'll, if you really desperately want it, give me an email. I'll try and figure out how I can get you a copy on the dodge. But you didn't hear me say that because that's probably infringing someone's rights or something.
Kathy says next week, have a few drinks before you do this.
Because I'm nervous. Yes, you can tell.
Have a few drinks and you'll be right.
Did I read too fast? Too slow? Too fast? Too fast?
No, it's great. It's perfect.
It's a long book, right? By the time I get to the end of it, I'll be a pro. I'll be reading along, I'll be suave, I'll be doing all the actions. I'll be like, can I grab that monkey? I thought I'd do it this time, but I tried with it on the screen, just reading the text, and I can see myself in a little window. It's really disconcerting because all you guys can see is the light shining off the top of my head, and it's just this really, really horrendous, I'm not quite going bald yet, but, I'm feeling a little bit on top. And I was like, it's just horrible. So better that I read from the book, but I can't really take my hands off or I'll lose my place.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not getting the
enactments.
People do say, especially Rue complains about this, I talk a lot. So with my hands. And so we'll be driving along in the car and I'm giving this very animated thing next to her, and God knows what the people who are driving towards us think, like I'm communicating via sign language or something. Anyway.
As if. Yeah, you do talk a lot. Brilliant.
Right, enough crap from me. Rue's giving me the so
live neutering. What the hell? Rich asked, any Facebook live neutering coming up?
The neutering. I won't be doing it live. Oh Jesus! Unless we're talking about Rue.
No, he's talking about Thailand.
I'm hoping you. Funny. Okay, right. Last thing. Slightly funny story about that. So that story, which you're referring to, Rich, which is from it's a story. It happens in the Thailand book, and it's right in the middle of the Thailand book. And if anybody's read that book, again, it's a bastard long book, and the first like 4 books of that book take place in Wales, in Treorchy, in this horrible situation. And I've been meaning forever to go back and cut that bit in half because everyone moans about it. It's a right load of crap. But anyway, there are some amusing bits when I get to Thailand, and one of them is this story about cutting the balls off a dog. Not me personally, but I was present. It was an operation. It was all hunky-dory. It was on purpose, but suffice to say I didn't react terribly well to it. And I thought this book was hilarious. And so I did exactly what I did in That Bear in My Pants. The story with the monkeys which featured halfway through. I cut out the beginning, put it at the front, so that for the first person who reads it, you know, they don't get, there I was in Ecuador, they get, monkey, I shouted as a brown blur swung out of the cage onto the path. It's, you know, star in the middle, grab him by the balls, all that stuff. So I did that in the Thailand book as well. And I used this bit. It wasn't until just recently, when we were making like an omnibus edition, a box set, if you will, of the first 3 books, that I read the prologue of the Thailand book. And I looked at it and it just sort of jarred a little bit. I mentioned this to Rue, and I said, you know, what's kind of odd is that when you're reading the books from 1 all the way through to number 2, you have the end of book 1, which is sort of quite poignant. You know, I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say I'm leaving Santa Martha. I'm saying goodbye to the animals. I'm saying goodbye to Toby and to all the people I've known, and to a huge chapter of my life, really. And I was sad, and the other people were sad, and it was a bit of a tearjerker, you know. And I finished on a kind of a positive note, but you know, I'll go on. I'll you know. And then the next thing is testicles. Because testicles is the very beginning of the prologue for the next book, and whilst I thought it was kind of hilarious in context, coming on the hot on the heels of that, it was a little bit unsettling. And I said to Rue, and I think her words were something like, "Oh, fuck me, really? That's the prologue? What the hell are you thinking?"
No wonder we don't sell that book.
Yeah, she pointed to the sales figures and went, yeah, like, hello. So we've sold something, we had over 100,000 downloads of the first book, and like 15 of book 2, not 15,000, like 15, no buggers read it. And she says, I think the reason might be because you open it with testicles, so perhaps open it with something more sedate, you know, suck them in, and then cut to the testicles, you know, once they've bought the book, you know, once they're in there. So I still got to write another prologue for book 2, or find one from later on the book to liberate and cut and stick in there, because the testicles have been removed. But not in the paperback versions, because I only sell a handful of those, and I can't really be bothered to update them, which is terrible to say, but it's true. So yes, but don't fear if you want to know what happened to the dog's bollocks. It's still later on in the book. I didn't cut it out. It's still in there, and that story will come in about 115 years, I think, if I do 1 chapter a week. It's going to be a while. It's going to take decades, let's face it. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm sorry that I write such damn long books, that probably most of you will be dead of COVID-19 before you hear
too soon.
Even half of them.
Is it too soon?
Too soon? Okay. Right. In that case, I should definitely go. So,
by the way, everyone's been asking about his water bottle.
Oh, I said at the beginning, it's
not gin. It's water.
If I drank that much gin,
whoa,
yeah, I would need help to stand.
Yeah, you would.
And probably help even to sit up. It's just water, because we live in Australia and it's hot. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's still relatively hot. So hydrate, guys, and that is my advice to you. Hydrate and stay safe.
Yeah, and everyone stay safe. Look after yourselves, please.
And and more than anything, try and be happy, because you know, in this
crazy,
time,
so.
Yeah, a lot of shit's going down, and if you can do one thing, I think it's be happy and try and make other people around you happy, because you know, that's all we've really got at the moment is each other. So you know, make the most of what you got.
That's
and
it. 100%.
Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you all for dropping by. Love you guys loads. Thank you for supporting us over all these years.
Yeah, cheers, guys. And now you get treated to the awkward reach around while we desperately try and find how the hell you turn this thing off. So I'm going to look in all these different directions.
And I'll probably switch him off by unplugging them. Awesome.
End live video.
Love you guys.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.
And see you next week.
See you later. Oh, hit bye.
If you end this live, you'll be able to choose if you want to save or delete it.
Okay.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Hit go.
Okay, we're going to try and save it.